All right, perfect. So my name is Jevin West. I know many of you. It's so great to see all these faces. Thank you so much for coming out here, taking a Tuesday afternoon in December to come and sort of launch something that we think is really important here at in the Pacific Northwest and in the country. But before I get started, I want to start with a land acknowledgement here. So on behalf of the University of Washington, I respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we stand is the traditional home of the coastal Salish people, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Squamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering and to this dialogue. To acknowledge this land is to recognize its longer history and our place in that history. It is to recognize these lands and waters and their significance for the peoples who lived and continue to live in this region, whose practices and spiritualities were and are tied to the land and the water, and whose lives continue to enrich and develop in relationship to the land, waters, and other inhabitants today. All right, with that, we have a lot of conversations to have today. And part of the mission of what we're doing here is to engage the public, it's to engage leaders, and that's what we're doing today. So what I want to do is start with a video to start that conversation.
We've never had a technology like a smartphone, where it's with us all the time.
The information age is going to reverse the industrial age.
It takes an order of magnitude more energy to refute BS than it does to create it.
We are living at a singular moment in history. Never before have we had access to more. More knowledge, more opinions, more analysis, more advertising, more information.
There's a growing concern about the role that technology plays in our lives. That's warranted.
This brave new world promised to unite us in ways we never thought possible. From launching worldwide movements to forging personal relationships across continents and cultures. But even as the information age has connected us, it has also sown unmistakable division.
Liberal media elite. Wait a minute.
This is ridiculous. And he just got in my face.
Because when seeing is no longer believing.
Everything we're taught in school is belief-based. We've been lied to our entire lives.
And reality itself can be skewed en masse. We lose the shared understanding of the world that's essential to a functioning society.
No testers! No peace!
Addressing these challenges will take more than simple solutions and siloed perspectives.
You are not an accident!
That's why we started the Center for an Informed Public. Building from more than 150 years of innovation and public service at the University of Washington, we're uniting researchers and practitioners, academia and industry, governments and local communities around one of the most pressing issues of our time. Our aim is to rebuild common ground, restore public trust, and reignite discourse. Join us in restoring trust in information and each other.
So thank you to the makers of that, Michael and Dana. Michael is actually sick, just like our provost today, which unfortunately couldn't show up. That norovirus is going around. A lot of what was said in that video are things that we're going to hit on today. And what I want to do, just to get us started, these are the kinds of things that Carl and I do in our Calling BS class. I'm going to start with a little game here. You can go ahead and put that first slide up if possible. As they're setting up that slide, one of the things that we want to do with this center is to bring together all the different groups that are working on this. The technologists, the journalists, the librarians, the policymakers. This isn't something that we can do just within individual departments or even individual schools. And that's one of the themes that's going to come out hopefully today. This was a project that Carl and I started Carl Bergstrom, who's in the Department of Biology and a close colleague and friend of mine. We put out this about 6 months ago. It's called Which Face is Real? It was to provide some public awareness of how good the technology is getting at creating photorealistic faces. It uses this technology called GANs, these generative adversarial networks, and that's the kind of core technology that's sort of driving a lot of the deep fakes that maybe some of you have heard. So before we get started, I'm just curious, how many people think the image on my right, so this one over here, is the real one? Raise your hand if you think that one's the real one. Okay, about half of you. This is why this is such a fun game for me when I see about half. How many think it's on the left? A little bit more, or sorry, yeah, my left, or your right, or whatever it is. All right, well, it turns out that the one on the right is real. And by the way, this is old technology. We use some of the old technology, 6 months old technology, to make this statement. And what this really has forced us as a human species to think about is, one, our role with technology and how good it's getting at even the sort of most personal things like the human face, creating humans that just don't exist. And there's laws going out right now. Many of you follow this. Laws in Texas and California, laws in New York. There's laws in other countries. I just got back from Australia where they were dealing with politicians defending themselves with deep fakes. This is the world we live in. And this is the kind of thing that the center will address, among many, many other things. Go ahead and next slide. But we have to do this not just as a conversation with technologists and the platforms that are creating a lot of this, good benefits to society and negative benefits. We're dealing with news deserts. Next slide. We're also dealing with the ability to automate opinions. We have, this is one of those news stories that just didn't get enough attention, in my opinion. When Facebook admitted to deleting, as they were forced to, 1.3 billion fake accounts over a 6-month period, that's got to make us think differently about the information system in which we live. Next slide. And just yesterday, the Samoan government had to close its offices and many aspects of the country because of a measles outbreak that wasn't just a measles outbreak. This was resulting in 53 people dead, 48 of them were children. And that was due, in large part, to this fear and misinformation about vaccinations. This is the world we live in, and it has real human impact. Next slide. That's why we have this, we've put together this center. And as you'll see, it involves lots and lots of different people. We wanted to have a place, a hub, for when anyone has ideas, whether it's a librarian, a teacher, a politician, a tech leader that has an idea, a place to come and interact with others that are thinking about this and care about it. As it said in the video, I really, truly believe this is the most pressing problem of our time. This year was supposed to be my sabbatical. For anyone in academics knows how valuable a gift that is. It's one of the most wonderful professional gifts you can ever be given. I hope everyone gets a sabbatical at some point. My wife has allowed me to give up my sabbatical to help do this. And I think that it's a testament to what you're all doing. You're taking your time to care about it. I've talked to many of you in this crowd. We care about it in the world, I think, from the young to the old, from across the country, from across the world. And I think here in the Northwest and in Seattle, we can do something really neat. Sitting in the background of these with the tech companies that are creating it, sitting in one of the most innovative universities in a state that has the kind of innovative and sort of community energy that we could be leaders on this. I really, truly believe that. That's why I'm willing to give up the sabbatical. Next slide. So I want to introduce my team. You'll get to know them a little bit more. There's Emma Spiro, Chris Coward, Kate Starbird, and Ryan Kalo. You're going to meet them. But this is a bigger team. Next slide. It involves other people on campus. I wish I could have 50 slides here of all the people I've talked to that really have amazing ideas that we want to bring to. So Carl Bergstrom, like I said, a close colleague and my closest collaborator on all this work. Franzi, who joins us for lunch. Jason Young, Anita Croft, Hanson Hussein, Alex Stonehill. There's many and many that are already contributing, and we'll talk a little bit about them in this program. Next slide. And this map of just the University of Washington, of all the different groups, from the Jackson School, from the Population Health Initiative, across campus in the medical school, this map is growing on people thinking about this, and it really requires that kind of effort. This touches every aspect of society, and that's what we're trying to do with the center. Next slide. Here's our mission. I'll just read this one quote, and then I won't read quotes. Our mission is to marshal the collective resources of a world-class public research. You see that I emphasize public. We're a public institution, and that's really, I think, at the core of what we're doing. embedded within local communities to resist strategic misinformation, promote an informed society, and strengthen democratic discourse. Democratic discourse, an important element of that. Keep going. We see 4 pillars. Actually, really should be 5. We're sort of debating that 5th, but maybe journalism really should, but we see that as engagement. But at the core, we're a research institute, and we're there to establish a field of misinformation that crosses disciplines. There will be a policy element led by Ryan Kalo. There'll be an education led by Carl, and you'll meet Michael Caulfield from WSU. And there'll be a strong public engagement led by Chris Coward and others that have really a real strong connection to libraries. Next slide. Almost there, and we'll go into the panel. These are the 3 kind of questions that we're going after when we talk about the research. We're trying to understand how information flows, how it spreads, how to intervene in strategic misinformation. That's a big part. But the one that really has been echoing in my head ever since we were given that great news from Sam, who I'll introduce you in just a second, that we were given funding to start this center, is that there's no way we can make progress on the research or the education unless we engage values, beliefs, and perspectives. To me, we have to do that, and I think it's one of our distinctive characteristics. And hopefully that will lead to action and change. Next slide. This is what concerns me. Many of you have seen this in Pew. We're becoming more and more ideologically divided. Next slide. Even trust in universities is going down. And actually, we just had a guest speaker, Jonathan Gruden, in our class this last week. He talked about there's different ways of interpreting that, which is true. We always talk about that in our class. But the point is, there seems to be even lack of trust in the most important institutions that at least I care about, science, universities, et cetera. Next slide. And if we have a society where people can't agree on basic facts, how do we have a functioning democracy? Last slide. So that's what we're here to do. We're here with the center. We're going to talk about this today with the founders and other people involved with this. And last slide before I introduce Sam. This is Sam, actually last night. He sent me this. He's been on 2 red-eye flights just to come here. This is how much he cares about this. This was his brainchild. He's investing $50 million in this effort across the country. We're one of those lucky to receive funding. He's going to give us his perspective. I'll give you a quick introduction to Sam. Sam, from the Knight Foundation, he oversees the community and national initiatives programs at the foundation, and he will share details about the funding opportunity that Knight created and we responded to promote research on the future of an informed society. With that, let's give Sam a round of applause.
Thank you. Is this on? Oh, there. Thank you very much, Jevin. That's not a deep fake. That's a true image from FlightAware that I sent last night. I cannot believe how many people are here. I would think only Russell Wilson could command this kind of crowd in the city of Seattle. It is, I think, a true testament to the potential of this work. And I just want to take a few moments to explain the hopes that we have at Knight Foundation for this work, for this university, because we really do think the stakes are ultimate. And I'll start with a story, which is that in the early 20th century, over 40% of the population across 11 southern states in the U.S. was infected with hookworm disease, and many did not even know they had the condition. And for those of you who know something about hookworm, in addition to the deleterious health effects, fatigue caused by the disease can really be a drain on a population. In fact, was a drain on the underdeveloped South, and actually threatened the cognitive development, the physical development of an entire generation of Southerners. So in 1909, John D. Rockefeller gave a $1 million grant, which was about $25 million in today's dollars, to form the Rockefeller Sanitary Commission dedicated to eradicating the disease. And crucially, the commission focused on education, on treatment, and on building a sanitation system commensurate with the demands of 20th century urbanized society. By the time the commission concluded its work in 1915, it had eradicated the problem. And the breakthrough of the commission was to recognize that the question of health in an industrial society had become a challenge at the scale of the entirety of a population. In fact, the leader of the commission, Wycliffe Rose, drew from the experience the belief that the future of disease control in the developed world would require a new profession. Medicine, he postulated, would continue to focus on the individual treatment of disease, but a new field of public health would be required to control disease at the level of a whole population. And crucially, he saw this as a profession. It would include top government administrators, technical experts, and the new kinds of knowledge required, such as epidemiology and statistics, and then the frontline people like food inspectors and public health nurses. The profession would require a variety of types of training and extend across public and private sectors. But at the center, Rose believed, there would have to be an independent school within a university that could serve as a font for knowledge and for talent, the wellspring of this new field of study and practice. And based on this plan, the first school of public health opened at Johns Hopkins in 1918. This school was joined just a few years later by others at Harvard, Columbia, and Yale. And today, there's not a single hospital, a single public health agency, or even a major corporation whose operations have implications for population-level health that is not either led or at least staffed by experts who are trained in public health. And I believe that we are here today to recognize a similar new development and a critical milestone in that development. The internet and the corporations that provide services on top of it now connect billions of people. The balance of our social, political, and commercial transactions are directly or indirectly enabled and mediated by digital technology. This technology is how we are informed, how we engage in commerce, how we connect to each other. Indeed, this technology and the opportunities it affords are how we define the era. It's the language that we use. The handful of companies that provide services on the internet are now among the largest in the world and are, in fact, eating this city alive, according to some of the reports I've heard from some of you today. And they operate their businesses wholly unlike the industrial manufacturing that built and defined the developed societies of the 20th century. They thrive not on raw materials, but on data about us and machine learning and artificial intelligence systems unlike anything witnessed in human history. And just as the last industrial revolution unleashed both an immense leap in prosperity and flourishing, it also created new kinds of challenges at the scale of the whole of society, challenges like those that spurred the advent of public health. The internet and digital technology have generated opportunities for advancement, for well-being, and fulfillment that we simply could not have imagined even 2 decades ago. Along with these opportunities have emerged new questions, and these questions defy the current structures of knowledge. What makes for efficient and fair commerce when data is a competitive advantage and efficiencies come from horizontally distributed network services is one question. Another question, what engenders well-being in a world when harassment and bullying can literally follow you around in your pocket and manifest as an anonymized global community out to get you? And most crucially for Knight Foundation, how can a democracy remain informed when, on the one hand, we have access to more information than at any time during human history, yet on the other, the authority behind facts is unclear and destabilized, and when the production and dissemination of information no longer rests solely in the hands of journalists and editors, but is distributed among the billions globally with an internet connection. The Jonas and James L. Knight Foundation supports democracy through more informed, engaged communities, and the modern foundation is operated in accordance with the values of our founders and the way they operated their business. The Knights ran their company at the apex of a professionalized news industry and an economic model that enabled a series of geographically distinct news entities, each bound to the context and culture of its place, the city that it was in. That world has obviously profoundly changed. The way the Knights ran their business was not to resist change, but to embrace it. Our investment in the University of Washington Center for an Informed Society is how we at the Modern Knight Foundation are embracing these changes. The center is dedicated to thinking anew about the boundaries of knowledge in the academy and preferring new methods and new questions that can help us to understand how information is organized and transmitted in this digital age. And like the public health schools of the early 20th century, this center and this university, this entire university system that's represented here today, are dedicated to practical public service. The information school in which the center sits is already nationally recognized for its extensive outreach to practitioners and communities around the country. Our investment in this center is part of a series of investments in this kind of critical work. The University of Washington has received one of five $5 million grants to establish such centers. The other recipients are Carnegie Mellon, the George Washington University, the University of North Carolina, and New York University. Another $25 million on top of that has been allocated to similar research enterprises. Like the Rockefeller Foundation of 100 years ago, we hope that this investment is just the beginning of new insights, new knowledge, and new paradigms that can help our democracy not only survive, but thrive in this digital age. We hope to accelerate the work of current scholars, inspire new entrants to the field, and equip a generation of individuals who can work across sectors to ensure that technology serves the interests of an informed democracy. I'll close just by quoting the final paragraph of the actual entry that I found in the 1916 minutes of the Rockefeller Foundation when they established the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health. And it reads as this: "The benefits from the establishment of such a school as that contemplated will not be measured solely by the number of students trained within its walls. A far-reaching influence should be exerted upon the advancement of the science and the improvement of the practice of public health, in establishing higher standards and better methods of professional education in the field, in stimulating the founding of similar institutions in other parts of the country, in supplying teachers, and in cooperating with boards of health and other medical schools. We at Knight have no less an aspiration for the work being inaugurated here today at the University of Washington. Your charge could not be greater, the stakes could not be higher. We are incredibly proud and honored to stand with you. We thank the university and the system for this and this community for your mutual commitment, and we very much look forward to what is to come. Thank you very much for being here today.
Perfect, Sam. Amazing, perfect. Thank you so much, Sam. I think you really sort of hit the nail on the head, that we really are doing something special, and it requires everyone. So what we're going to do now, we were going to invite Mark Richards, who was our provost. Like I said, he's sick, but we have a first place. It's not second place. A first place contestant, our Dean Aninde, is going to come up, and he's going to pinch hit for us today. I will just say one thing about Aninde, about this whole process. He has just given us, he's pulled everything out of the way for us. One of the things that we wanted to do was collaborate across the university, and that including stars like Kate Starbird. That included bringing Ryan in. And when Emma and I and Chris were saying that, you know, this has to be more than just the iSchool, he said, well, I mean, he didn't say it this way. He's like, no, duh, of course. I mean, we've got to do it that way. So I'd like to introduce him, and then he's going to introduce our panel to come and talk about specifically what we're going to do in these different pillars. Good job.
Good afternoon. So in this panel today, we're going to get to hear a little bit more about what the center will be doing. So I'd like to first introduce our panelists, starting on my far right. Kate Starbird is an associate professor in human-centered design and engineering, where she directs the emerging capacities of mass participation laboratory.
I think the mic is...
I'll speak loud. Chris Coward is a senior principal research scientist and director of the technology, it's on now, and social change group in the Information School. Emma Spiro is an assistant professor in the Information School, where she co-directs the Data Lab and the Social Media Lab. Ryan Kalo holds the Lane Powell and D. Wayne Gittinger Endowed Professorship in the School of Law, and co-directs the Tech Policy Lab, an interdisciplinary research unit that spans the School of Law, Information School, and the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. And then finally we have Michael Caulfield, who is the Director of Blended and Networked Learning at the Washington State University. Welcome. So to kick this off, we've heard a little... Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. So to kick this off, we saw a number of interesting sort of provocative statements made in the video. We had Jevin, who introduced a lot of these thoughts and gave a little bit of a hint about what the center would be focusing on. But I'm going to open it up with Kate and Chris. And I'd like you to tell us about the kind of research that you think will be needed in this space. What are the big open questions that you're hoping to address?
Yeah, so let me start, not by some of the open questions, I'm going to get there, but I want to start with what we're already learning. We've been, we and other researchers around the country have been looking at this problem for a while, and there are things we're learning. And one of the things I think is important to sort of set the stage for the rest of this conversation is the language around even talking about some of these things. And one of the things I want to start out with is this distinction that we're learning how to talk about between misinformation and disinformation. And so to clarify that here, misinformation is information that's false, but not necessarily deliberately false. while disinformation is intentionally false or misleading information that has some kind of strategic intent behind it, sometimes political, sometimes commercial, other kinds of things. So this distinction between misinformation and disinformation turns out to be really important when we start to think about solutions and even about understanding the different problems. Other things that we're looking at and beginning to learn are like the pervasive spread of misinformation and disinformation. The threat isn't necessarily that somebody will be misled about one issue or another issue. The threat is that we begin to lose trust in information altogether. And so when we think about addressing these problems, we're not thinking about how do we teach people to be more skeptical. We're actually thinking about how do we make the systems more trustworthy and how do we restore trust in the systems. Another thing that we're learning about is, disinformation, misinformation, they're participatory. They don't spread themselves, right? So we spread mis and disinformation. I mean, we up here, all of us, right? You and me and everybody, we are vectors in the spread of disinformation. And we're all vulnerable to disinformation, misinformation and disinformation. Our lab has encountered that a couple of times in our research. In one study, we were looking at polarized political conversations in 2016. And we saw how Russian agents from the Internet Research Agency infiltrated both sides of those conversations. And people on the right and people on the left were retweeting and spreading content that was coming from the Internet Research Agency. So we know that we're vulnerable. We also know that we've experienced disinformation as we're doing our own research. My research team has been affected by disinformation. It can be very disorienting. It can be very misleading. And what happens is we tend to think of other people as being vulnerable, but when we start thinking of ourselves as being vulnerable, I think we have a different set of reactions to that. So we're learning about these things, but there are some really important open questions, and I think to state three of them, one is just this open question of we need to better understand the dynamics of misinformation and the strategies and mechanisms behind disinformation. How do these things spread? Why do they spread, right? A second piece of it is we need to, this is a big one, measuring impact. We can talk about impact. We can talk about, horrifically, we can talk about how people in Samoa are dying because of misinformation about vaccines and actions that they're taking that are informed by misinformation. We can see disinformation spreading through political leaders and media influencers around our country and around the world. So we know that these things have impact, but we've had a hard time measuring that impact in quantitative ways to understand how spread this is across society. So we need to work on figuring out ways of measuring it. And finally, I think we need to really think about solutions. How do we start addressing these problems? Whether it's through policy changes, whether it's through designs of technologies that work differently, that help us not spread misinformation, or whether it's through education initiatives. And when I say education, I don't mean K through 12, I mean K through 99. I think all of us need to be better educated about this so we can become healthier engagers in information spaces of all kinds.
Thank you. Is on? Okay. Yeah, I can build on that, especially that last part about solutions. And the other side of this research enterprise is on the applied research, which is something we're all very excited about. And you asked, what are those big open questions? And it's like, how do we move from describing the problem to solving the problem? How do we take an understanding of how these rumors are disseminated through these networks, how the different tactics are being employed, and then turn those into new media literacy programs, into new ways of having community conversations around civic issues, around new approaches for journalism, new technologies. And so what this means in practice in applied research is that we'll be actually out in communities, we'll be in neighborhoods, working here and across the state and across the country, working with people and to understand how are these issues affecting them, and because they are the inspiration for a lot of the research. And we'll be engaging with the public. And as Jevin said, it's a commitment of ours as a public university to have that strong public engagement model. And we'll be working with partners. We have lots of guests here from, the Seattle Times, other New York Times, other journalist organizations, Microsoft, Tableau, Pacific Science Center, many of our regional public library systems. These are all the organizations that we can work with to sit down. And so what that means in our lab is that we want to create the center as a space where people from outside the academy can sit and work with our faculty and students, come up with the research questions, co-create interventions that can actually go out and be tested. And then those are the partners will be the ones who will scale solutions broadly throughout society. So we're very excited about the kind of the applied research mission of the center.
That's great. So, Emma, we've heard about some of these open challenges, partly around dissemination, understanding how misinformation and disinformation disseminates and spreads. We've heard about the need to measure its impact, as well as the need to engage the public. How will the center actually accomplish those things?
The big question. So first, let me say, we know there are big challenges, right? Each of those big questions that Kate just talked about and then just summarized, right? Tracking and understanding the dynamics of misinformation and disinformation, thinking about measuring impact both on short-term scales and long-term scales, and really thinking about identifying solutions that don't themselves make the problem worse. These are really big questions. These are questions that we cannot answer on our own. But at the same time, we know they're big, they're complex, they necessitate interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches. We think we also are starting from a point of strength. And I think that builds from the sort of joint values of our whole team here. As Jevin said, the mission of our center is very clear. Right? Our aim is to resist strategic misinformation and to promote and strengthen democratic discourse. And so we know to achieve these aims, we really need a multi-pronged approach. So Jevin showed our nice little graphic. We're hoping that our Center for an Informed Public will actually coordinate activities across different areas of attention. So clearly, continuing to lead and develop our top-tier research program is very much on the forefront of our minds. But we also have particular objectives in terms of how to actually translate and bridge the gap between research and education, research and curricula, research and policy, and research with engagement with the public. So really, we're trying to launch and establish this center to increase our collective capacity to address these problems, right? As a campus, as a university, as a state, right, and as a nation. And by establishing this center here at the University of Washington Seattle campus, we're really trying to institutionalize shared resources. So this is everything from shared data and shared research infrastructure, shared expertise, and a shared space for coming together, for creating and building relationships that we need in order to address this problem. So we're really thrilled to be able to announce that we're going to be running an innovation fund to spark new research in this space. We want to be able to fund pilot studies that are going to go out and create the new critical data and new critical ideas that we need to be able to address this problem and attract more competitive research proposal funding, of course. And we really, we sat around the table and we talked about the ideas that we wanted to pursue. We have some of them, right? Tracking and understanding the dynamics of misinformation, thinking about how that information is translated into values and beliefs and actions. But we know our questions aren't the only ones. So another thing we're going to be doing at the center is coordinating a set of grand challenges so that we can co-create with all of you, with our community, what should be the areas of focus for the center moving forward and what activities go along with that. So we want to bring people together. We want to bring people together across different backgrounds, across different disciplines, across different campuses, in and outside the university. And so we'll be convening and hosting a number of different conversations that really are addressing all of us who are affected by misinformation. The center will be a magnet, right? A magnet for this kind of activity. And it's also going to be home to a bunch of different cohorts of fellows. So we'll be joined by postdoctoral scholars, we'll be joined by research assistants, affiliated faculty, community fellows who we bring in to work with us, as Chris mentioned. And all these people, we actually just posted the job announcement last week, so please send it around. All of these people represent the next generation of thought leaders, of innovators, of scholars who are really going to define this field and really move the needle on some of these problems. So I'd say sort of bottom line here, right, what we're trying to do with the Center for an Informed Public is to build and grow a community. And that means we're going to be relying on all of you, all of us, to really help us achieve these aims.
Thank you, Emma. Ryan, one of the things that Emma mentioned was the desire and the need to really leverage our collaborative capacity on this campus. And I'm wondering if you can give us your unique perspective on the role of law and policy.
Yeah, I mean, so one of my great joys of being at the University of Washington is it seems that there's a shared commitment to the following. The idea that there are very few important questions left that could be resolved by reference to any one discipline. And that's why the university has been so supportive and helpful around interdisciplinary collaborations like this one. So when it comes to misinformation and disinformation, one of those disciplines I think has to be law. If you think about lawyers having thought about democratic discourse and its possibility for hundreds of years, down to the way that we think about what is reliable information enough to reach a jury in a courtroom, it's something that we study very closely. And so there are three ways I think that the legal community here and my colleagues at the law school are really excited to participate. And one is just the research itself, right? We already have students looking at all of the different deepfake legislation that states are passing or thinking about passing in order to have a better conversation about that. I've done research about what's the best way for governments to respond to automated accounts, so-called bots online, and have a law review article with a former student who is now at the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press in UCLA Law Review. So we're doing original research. We're really excited about that. Not only am I, but my colleagues as well are really excited. The second thing I think we can do is we can help to frame the research questions in such a way that they more directly inform the current policy discussions. That is to say, sometimes you can just slightly tweak your investigation, slightly tweak your research question so that it really helps to answer some gnawing, wicked debate that's going on, whether in Olympia or in Washington, D.C. or somewhere else. And so I think really that one role that I and my colleagues have, and not just the law school, but also the wonderful Evans School of Public Policy, what we can really do is help to make sure that those questions are being asked in a way that's most useful. And then finally, we can really be a resource at, and we intend to be a resource at the solution stage. I mean, I think that we should have no illusions about, and I'm going to refer to the difficulties here, we should have no illusions about the fact that when you're intervening in speech, you're doing so in the United States against an incredibly robust free speech tradition, one that is deservedly thick and long-standing and really important. So we have to make sure that the kinds of solutions that we propose and the kinds of ideas that we have for intervention are respectful of the First Amendment and of the speech tradition. And we also have to be wise about what the law says about the liabilities and responsibilities of platforms like social media platforms. And so there's a real, I think having a group of committed law professors and others to really help navigate that space wisely is going to be incredibly important for us to make good traction on this hard issue.
So one of the things I've been following some conversations on the policy side that regulations are sort of coming, right? So we're seeing the European Union is starting to regulate technology platforms, and there's going to be regulations here in the U.S. at some point. And there's a lot of uncertainty about what those are going to look like. And I think when we hear that, we get this sense, okay, they're going to be, censoring people or, making decisions about what can be amplified or these things. But I think we should actually be thinking about this in a kind of different way of like transparency. Is what kinds of regulations can we work on that can help platforms, give them the guidance of what kinds of cues and transparency should they give us when we're seeing information in online spaces? What cues can they give us about where information comes from and how it got to us and why the algorithm decided to show us that information and not some other piece of information? And these are kinds of questions that really take an integration of understanding how information spreads, understanding how the technology works, and understanding sort of law and policy and how regulations work. And so it's the coming together of those kinds of things that can help us inform what those policies should look like. And I think the center wants to be a part of those conversations and to think about beyond just restricting speech, but think about how do we give more transparency about the systems and the information that gets to us to, again, like try to build more trust in the information system so we as users can have a better understanding of the information we're seeing and what it means.
And this is why it's so excited to sort of be sitting here as the sort of the research side of things next to the law and policy side of things, is exactly what Ryan said, that we really need these things to have an interplay. Right? We need policies to be informed by not only how the technologies actually work, but also how people engage with them, how they interact with them, how they understand them, and how they use them. And so we're really, really excited about building that pipeline to be more formalized.
So that requires a certain amount of literacy amongst the population, and Jevin spoke about that, and some of the panelists have spoken about that. Mike, you're an expert in media literacy in particular, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you think the main challenges are with respect to media literacy as it pertains to misinformation.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the biggest challenge is what Kate started off with. This is participatory, right? This is disinformation that we all share. It's complex. It has a lot of different actors. It's decentralized. A lot of it is not immediately visible to the public. It's a much more complex environment and ecosystem than we would expect students, in a world of 3 broadcast stations. So just the complexity of that is a huge challenge. I think even where we have media literacy and info literacy, a lot of the stuff that we have is outdated and in some cases even counterproductive to our current challenges. I'll give you one example. If you think about traditional media literacy, critical thinking, information literacy, a lot of that process that we're used to teaching students asks them to look deeply at a document, piece of media, video, think deeply, think critically, spend a lot of time with it, think about the issues presented in it. But of course, disinformation is not just a war to advance a proposition, right? Disinformation is a war for attention. Disinformation seeks to structure attention, right? Disinformation seeks to exhaust our critical capacities. And all of these things are exactly what will happen if you look at everything coming through your feed and treat it as if it was coming from a reliable source and engage with it earnestly, even though that media may really intend to do you harm, right? So there's a lot of things that we need to rethink as we look. More is not necessarily going to do it if we don't think about the unique nature of this present problem. I'd say the biggest challenge I see, though, is the trap of cynicism, right? So, you get into this space, and every few weeks a reporter calls you and says, aren't we all doomed because we're also cognitively flawed, everybody's advancing their goals, and there's no way out of this, right? And it's true, we are cognitively flawed. We do try to advance our personal aims, right? We do a lot of things that are dumb, even when we're smart. We do a lot of things that are dumb. In fact, smart people do some of the dumbest things I've seen online, right? But the truth is that, people are not one thing. Right? People want to advance their personal goals, their political goals, show membership, party membership, partisan membership, ideological membership, but they'd also like to be seen as credible, right? And they're not one thing. People would like to be politically active, right? They'd like to organize. And short-term misinformation, disinformation can be really valuable if you're putting together a movement and you're trying to get momentum and you're trying to get attention. Long-term organizers know that misinformation and disinformation will corrupt your movement, right? So Jevin talked about talking through values, and I think it's just so key. The truth is that if you think about what you value and what you're concerned with, no matter where you are on the spectrum, for the vast, vast majority of people, whatever the temporary highs of misinformation and disinformation, right? The long-term effects of that are corrosive and are going to kill everything that you care about, right? And everything you seek to advance. And I think there's a real opportunity if we can get past the cynicism to speak through those values. And no, we're not going to make everybody. We're not going to ever eliminate it, but I think we can mitigate it in ways that can have really, really profound effects on society.
So I'm half tempted to ask all of you, what was the dumbest thing you've ever done online? But I'll save that for later. We've heard a little bit about the impact we can have on policy, on regulation potentially, and on literacy. And a lot of the focus has been on research. I'm wondering what the opportunities are for educational innovation with the center.
Well, I think in the immediate term, I'm interested in something called civic online reasoning, which is sort of a narrower frame than media literacy or digital literacy that looks at precisely these questions of how do we, how do we use online tools to make civic decisions? And I think that sort of increased focus on a smaller area can be really helpful. I do think that the biggest potential for innovation, though, is the sort of thing we're seeing with the Center for Informed Public. It's the fact that these things don't exist in isolation. The media literacy work I've done actually had at one point Pinterest calling me to ask how to change their UX because we were talking about how students were struggling and how some anti-vax information was propagating. There's room, I think, for a really great interplay between the work that Kate does on how this spreads and how we think about targeting educational interventions and where law has a place and where it doesn't. But I mean, I think this transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary place, that's where we need to be in education. And so I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I can build on that. And I think one of the things we're also interested in here at the center is like, where can we have impact in educational innovation? Kate mentioned this as a K-99 problem. So non-formal educational spaces are going to be critical, especially given the nature of how fast these technologies are changing, how these new tactics are coming up. We can't just learn this once and then think that we're inoculated in some way. So one of the places will be public libraries, and this is a big feature of our commitment. And some people may say, why public libraries? Well, they're in 16,000 communities. They have over 1.3 billion, at B with a billion visits annually. And importantly for this topic, they're trusted. By and large, they are trusted institutions in their communities, which is incredibly important for this work. So just as an anecdote, the team I work with here is doing some research. We're talking to librarians, asking them what is their experience with misinformation in their communities. And it's a big issue. And just like one story would be, a patron was at the computer going to a website to pre-register for the upcoming census. And she asked the librarian about this, and she said, well, she'd gotten this information actually from a mailer she'd received at home, that this was the site that you go to pre-register. Now, libraries are actually already pretty well equipped about the census, and they've done training for the librarians in terms of when does the census actually start. And so they knew that this was actually a fake site, and it was a fake site. But at the same time, they're saying, but the librarians are saying they're really ill-equipped for all of these changes that are upon us, and they need help. So I think, and as you said, some of the traditional ways or the ways we've been doing it are either counterproductive, even if not just ineffective. So that's a real opportunity for us to work with libraries. They are on the front lines in many cases of this problem to coming up with solutions. So I think that's another space where we can have impact, particularly around this educational side of things.
So let me just add a couple things with some examples about what we're doing here at the University of Washington already, building on what Mike and Chris just talked about. So this is one of our main sort of pillars of work, to really think about strengthening the pathway between our research agenda and educational outcomes like specific curricula for everybody from K through 99. And we've already started this, so we've run some workshops. Kate and Ryan did a wonderful workshop this morning with journalists. I'm teaching a class on problematic information this spring at the graduate level. So these courses are going to really enrich our programs here now at the University of Washington, but they're also going to provide a foundation for us to really develop this curricula and scale this curricula as well, because we know we're all vulnerable to misinformation. And I think one of the perspectives we bring to this, which Mike also emphasized, is that we really want students to see that multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary perspective. Right? There's no one way to tackle these problems, as is sort of evident by everybody here on the panel, and we want them to see that there are many different ways and that we need all of those ways. And so as Chris said, we have some really exciting opportunities for students to be able to actually do hands-on research as part of their training, to go out into our community labs, to go out into libraries, and actually work with communities and different publics to co-create solutions in this space. So I wish something like that had existed when I was a student, so we're really looking forward to that part of our program.
The center has this responsibility, I think, to literally save democracy, to not too fine a point on it. So we've heard about some of the research funding efforts that are going to happen. We've heard about the engagement with public librarians and journalists, and that's great. And we've heard about some of the classes that will be coming out of the center. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's coming next?
Sure. So what's coming next? Today is officially our kickoff, but really it's the kickoff of a whole year's worth and many years to come of activities and programming and things that we're going to be doing as the center. As we said, the center is going to be a magnet. So a couple things that we wanted to mention. On January 23rd, we're going to be having a public launch, sort of, a town hall event here in Seattle. And this event would not have been possible without our partners in Communication Lead. So Hanson and Alex, we have to say a big thank you to you for helping us organize this event. We're going to be working hard and continuing to work to build relationships across our campus and across campuses, engaging with our new faculty affiliates and other campus initiatives, the Earth Lab, the Population Health Initiative, and so on. I think one of the things we're doing immediately also is to really engage on the education side. So we're going to be running another Misinformation or Misinfo Day, where we bring hundreds of high school students to campus and really teach them about misinformation and its tactics. And then finally, we're going to be bringing some distinguished speakers to campus. We're going to be hosting some social events, and we're going to be, of course, organizing our grand challenges. So there's lots to look forward to, and we really hope you do all get involved.
Wonderful. We look forward to all of those events. Please join me in thanking the panel for sharing their thoughts with us today.
All right. Whoops. Okay, it's working perfectly. Okay, so you can see why I'm so lucky to be working with these individuals and others that you'll meet throughout. I encourage you to, at this event, go find them. We made a deal that we were going to break up and not talk to each other after the event. Go talk to them while we have them in the room. Let's hear your ideas. One thing I want to just say about metrics of success. When you're starting a center, everyone asks you, how are you going to measure success? And we're figuring that out. I'm not sure we've got it totally figured out, but I think one thing we could do is, one, be alive maybe 30 years from today. We want this to be a permanent center, so even beyond 30 years. That'd be one thing. To do a lot of the things that Emma had mentioned. And also to be a model, possibly for other states and other institutions trying to do the same thing. And we've talked to Sam and people at the Knight Foundation about wanting to do that and doing something really special. And that special is now coming. So every time you go to a big event like that, a lot of it's a dog and pony show, and fortunately, hopefully it's been more than that. But we have a big, sort of big reveal now. We've been trying to keep it quiet. You probably wondered why Mike is on the panel here. Some of you know about it. But what I want to do is introduce, in just a second here, the two presidents of our state institutions, or our education institutions in the state of Washington, Cauce, who you know, and Kirk Schultz. They're going to come up and make a little bit of an announcement, which we are all very excited about. And I think it's doing that special thing that we can be the model in the state. But I just want to say something about Anamari real quick. I just met Kirk on Friday, and the handshake was great, and we had a great, conversation for a few minutes at the Apple Cup. I wish we had more, but there's just so much going on. But Anamari I met on basically my first day as a faculty member when I came to the university as a faculty member, and we went on a bus tour together, us and other new faculty that particular year, and she rode along in the bus. She was a provost at the time, and actually I was telling our colleagues, she should be president. She's really, really great. She is one of the most, for the role that she runs at this university, I could think of no better, and I mean that genuinely. I teach a class on BS. I'm not BSing here, I promise. She is truly, I could think of no other leader that I'd want at our university and for this particular movement when they're trying to do. So without further ado, let's welcome our two presidents to come up on stage.
When I met him, I had no doubt that I wanted him to be a faculty member here for a very, very long time. No question. Well, you know, this is all about our democracy. I mean, you know, there's nothing more important than that. The foundations of our democracy are strong. You know, you've all watched Hamilton. You know, there was, you know, really some smart people who put this together. But no matter how strong those foundations are, like any structure, foundations require care, maintenance, and attention if we want them to last. So grateful to the Knight Foundation for their visionary investment in the care and maintenance of institutions that protect our liberty. A free press, responsibility to truth and accuracy, a shared understanding of facts. Without them, they are the foundations that enable a free and pluralistic society to thrive. And they are, I mean, I think Anand, you know, absolutely, this is about our democracy, no question. I'm very proud of UW's faculty experts and leaders from across our entire campus who are leading this innovative effort. But I'm also really excited that our friends and colleagues from WSU and their Murrow College of Communication are joining us in this effort for the public good, because we are better when we're together and we're stronger together. Perfect.
Jevin, thank you so much for mentioning the Apple Cup. Yeah, she asked earlier if it was in the car, if I brought it, so it's going to take another week before it comes. What better thing for two outstanding public research universities to be involved in than fighting misinformation and advancing the pursuit of truth? It's a core mission of higher ed. It has been for decades, and what a great partnership. I really appreciate when Anamari reached out and said, hey, we've got this going. We would like you all to participate and be a partner with us in this, and we appreciate the opportunity for Edward R. Murrow College of Communications to be an integral research and partner as we move this forward. I think there are lots of things that we can be doing together, and I think WSU is uniquely suited particularly to assist in the area of the rural and urban divide, which we read so much about and really is pervasive across so many things. That's going to be really important with us having campuses in very rural areas as well as urban. And I think those are some of the things, unique attributes that we can bring to this particular partnership. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here today to work with the University of Washington. And to me, I hope this is the first of many different opportunities our two research universities have to work together for the betterment of the state of Washington, the Pacific Northwest, the nation, and the world. So thank you.
As our speakers have pointed out, misinformation, disinformation, it's not about partisan politics. No matter where your politics lie, they sow division, fear, and mistrust across the aisle, and they undermine everyone's faith in the entire system. So if we care about common goals, things like safe communities, justice, equal opportunity, we have to care also about facts, truth, and accuracy. Our society shares a lot of common ground, but misinformation can be weaponized. It has been weaponized to divide us and to weaken us. Authoritarian movements everywhere thrive on chaos and misinformation. And through the Center for the Informed Public, we can fight back in the name of democratic governance.
I think partnership and collaboration are just two really key elements of any sort of successful research enterprise. And I think that's going to continue to be really important as we move ahead. We're really proud at WSU to be signing a letter of intent along with the University of Washington, showing our commitment to collaborate on this critical endeavor. Look forward to lots of wonderful things happening. In my experience as a university administrator, so often our faculty, our staff, and our students, when they get together to solve these tough problems, if we as administrators get out of the way, knock down barriers, and just allow folks to operate and be creative in what they do, it's amazing what our most talented folks can do together. So looking forward to signing my life away, and I hope that we can continue to work together in the future on other types of things. Thank you.
All right, we need, but while you're signing it, would the PIs and affiliates and partners come up? We're going to take a picture with all of us surrounding them, like hovering over them. So take it, come on up, come on up.
This is so much fun. On Friday, we were mortal enemies, and now we're signing a pact to work together. This is the best.
Okay. Come on up and just crowd around and make sure that it's a real signature here.
No fake?
No fake signatures. No fake. We're watching. Yeah. Come on in.
Although if you look at it, I'm not sure you can tell which is, real and which is fake.
All right, I think it's official. Pictures. All right, so everyone can take their seats again. Now I'm going to tell you what was in the document that they actually signed.
Yeah, that would be nice to know.
Yeah, that would. All right, I'm going to talk specifically, if we can put the first slide up, why I care about this personally so much. For anyone that knows me, I'm not very formal. I actually come from a very small town here in Idaho. It's called Ammon. Most of you probably have never heard of it before. Oh dear, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, I'll hold this here for a second. It's a town of about 3,000 people. It's actually tripled in size since I lived there as a kid, so that's been amazing. But my parents still live there. I go there every year. I visit friends. I visit family. Very different economically, very different politically, ideologically. But I love that place. I also love this place up in Seattle that I call home now, and where I have my family, and I'm raising my family, and I have friends that I consider family as much. And one of the things around this issue of misinformation is that everything seems to be politically tinged. And I really just don't think we can make progress as a center unless we reach across the state and engage those values. And that's why I think this means so much to me. And so you may be wondering why I'm taking my tie off. I'll tell you in just a second. Again, I don't wear, this is the first tie I've had since my wedding. Speaking of the football game, I can't even dress in there. So here, this is very, very serious for me here. Oh boy, I shouldn't have agreed to do this, but all right. All right, so we're going to do this across the state. We have to do this across the state. I got to thank Paul Rucker if he's in here. He gave me this shirt. It's actually sewn. This is not a sewn. It's actually sewn right there. This is what we're going to do across the state. Next slide. We are going to come together. Now, I had mentioned this one initially. Yeah, I know that's probably true. That is probably true. So what we have here, I showed you just some of the starting collaborations that are happening, and they're bubbling up. I wish we had, another hour to explain all the things that are moving already. But let's move to the next slide. Those dots are going to come across the country. Just as we mentioned, this town hall on the road that Hanson Hussein and Alex Stonehill are running. This is meant to go to town halls, not just in Seattle. We're not going to make progress if we just do this in Seattle. We're going to go to Spokane and Pullman. We're already looking at dates and venues. And the town hall isn't going to be about us speaking to the public. It's about listening to them and using that as a way of engaging our research and engaging our education curriculum. I want these dots to fill so much that the state of Washington has this network that Sam alluded to with the analogy to public health. Next slide. This is the thing we're going to start with, and we need, when people say, well, what can we do? We're excited about this too. We do think democracy is at stake. We do want to help. What can we do? Start by helping us with town hall events. Engage with our center. Join our mailing list. Just something that simple so we can talk to you and we can hear with you. Please engage with us. Next slide. Emma had mentioned, or Chris had mentioned the network of libraries. It's one of the things we do really well in the information school. We have an incredibly strong network of librarians. Thank you to all the librarians out there. I'm a big fan of lots of groups, but it's librarians, educators, and journalists. That's who we want to engage with as much as we can and use what they already know. Next slide. We had mentioned this Misinfo Day. This is something we did for the first time. The emphasis that we had last year on March 19th, this was run by Liz Krause, an MLIS student who's now running it for it this year. We brought in rural students and urban students, and we put them together in one room and spent a day on campus talking about misinformation. It was one of the more informative things that I've done, engaging with the high school students. That's what we can do. We've been talking to community colleges about this around the state, and we've been also looking to engage with other public universities and other universities in the state of Washington. Next slide. So I want to thank you. Thank you all for coming, all for taking your time. Thanks for all your ideas. So many I know in here. Thank you very much. We want to do that. I also want to thank, in particular, a few individuals that made this event and made this happen all together. First, there's Crystal Welliver, who's been a part of this from the very beginning. She's been amazing. Carol Palmer, James Perez, Michelle Norris, Maggie Foote, and Doug Perry, who was working over Thanksgiving to get our website up. He worked through, while we're eating and enjoying dessert, he was out there trying to build the website for us. So I really want to thank all of those. I want to thank my colleague Carl, who's really been a big, close friend around all of this. I want to thank all my PIs. I want to thank the central administration for allowing us to do this. Thank Annie's team and Randy and Mary and everyone. I'm missing people, I know, but there's so many people to thank, and I hope I can continue with that thanks 10 years down the road, 10 years in a row. Because this isn't just about me. In 2 years, I'm out, Kate's in after this. So, all right, next slide. Here's our center, but I also want to recognize something that came in UW News today. Next slide. There's another statewide initiative that we're using as our model. Jen is calling right now. The Ruckle House, for those who don't know, this was a cross-state and is a cross-state initiative, and William Rucklehouse was the person that came up with that. He passed away last weekend, and he is a model for how I think we can do it around this topic, and we'll learn from their lessons the things that work and the things that don't. With that, thank you all. Please go talk with all of the affiliates and co-founders, and please come talk to us anytime after this launch event. Thanks so much for coming.